We're going over the commander cards that are most worth buying for the month of October.
I'm Mia, and I think my specs are especially spicy today.
I'm BZ. I got really into the Slay the Spire board game. We're the Nitpicking Nerds.
Sponsored today by Boot.dev. Boot.dev is the best way to learn back-end developing in both Python and Go programming languages. You'll never be bored learning on Boot.dev because this is actually online, self-paced, and it feels like a role-playing game. It's super cool.
You can earn XP, levels, achievements, and complete quests to get a top spot on the global leaderboard, which they have.
The best way to learn is by doing it, so the platform is designed to get you writing a ton of code. Getting your hands on the keyboard and shipping projects is the only way to really learn. I wish I had this while I was in college because this would have helped me learn so much easier.
I also really appreciate that the creators of this don't want students feeling like they spent money on something that isn't helping them, so they actually offer a 30-day no questions asked refund policy and a free demo of every course and its interactive features.
If you want to learn how to write code and have a lot of fun doing it, click the link in the description box and use our code NITPICKINGNERDS to get 25% off your first month or even your first year if you choose their annual plan.
We're also sponsored by Card Kingdom, the best place to go to buy Magic the Gathering cards. If you want to support the channel and yourself by buying Magic cards that you're probably going to buy anyway, best place to do it is through Card Kingdom because you can use our link and support the show by telling them that we sent you.
We love them, and all of the prices that you're going to see are going to be Card Kingdom prices. We're also sponsored by Dragon Shield, best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
If you use the code
NERDS,
you can save 5% of your real money dollars on your entire order, including on the new Halloween sleeves, which are scary and super cool. And they are limited time, so go check them out because they have awesome art sleeves.
Moxfield, sponsor, somewhere. Guess? Wrong. Also, we have Patreon if you want to support us directly. If you want to leave a tip, essentially, you can get some free bonus content as a result of that. So we've got the cards that are most worth buying for the month of October. Now, this does not mean you should go out and buy 150,000 of these to pay for your child's college tuition fund, but it does mean if you were looking at these cards or you have a deck that they could go in, these are 100% worth the price to buy one or two. You know, at the end of the video, we're going to drop in a little sprinkle of what we've been mini speculating on as a part of a game we're playing. But for these, we're just talking about these are really good buys right now.
I am so excited for this month because we have some bangers on here. I didn't expect to see any of these on here because they have dropped so low. The first one is AC, Tyrant of Gyre Strait at $8.50. I am so surprised to see it on here because it was like $40 a few months ago. 6 mana for a 5/5. You can play an additional land on each of your turns, and when a land you control enters, you could draw a card. This just fuels itself and is one of the big Simic value commanders. Previously was only reprinted as a commander like Precon commander, but now that it's reprinted in another Precon, we have additional copies of it flying around.
Yeah, this card just slaps. It's so annoying. It fuels itself, so even if you don't ramp into it, you can play it on turn 6 and then play like a Terramorphic Expanse or something. Get that extra permanent ramp. It's in play now. You got 2 cards off of it. This deck, whether you're playing it in the 99 or as a commander, it doesn't really matter. The card's just very, very strong. It's a solid 6-drop, and I think I haven't seen this card much in the 99. Of course, if you want to build an AC deck, you kind of have to have AC. So people were shelling out the 40 for it then. But now I think more people are going to be able to play it in their 99s as they pick it up like, oh, it's less than $10? Like, I'll definitely scoop it up for my deck that just happens to have fetch lands in it or has a bunch of like Harrow effects. Or maybe I'm playing a landfall deck and I just couldn't afford this stupid thing because it was $40.
I mean, if I was playing a Tatiova deck, I would be putting it in the 99. If I had a no-budget Uro deck, I would also be putting it in there because this is such a powerful card. If I can find the budget, I definitely will be slotting it into there. Due to how widely available this card is now, I think we're going to see it a lot more in the EDH Rex, like best of 99 cards, or at least more seen in the 99.
Yeah, this is one of those cards where when you start out the game with like a Nature's Lore into a Sky Shroud Claim into this snowball effect is just going to be huge, and it's one of those like big mana effects similar to like Bolas's Citadel or like Trouble in Pairs where you play it and you're going to get your cards back as a reward for like ramping into it.
I'm also this makes it so that if I draw Nature's Lore or Sky Shroud Claim later in the game, I'm not mad at it because your lands will come in untapped and then you'll also be getting cards off of it, which will help you just churn your way to a bigger victory plan.
It's such good card advantage. It just rewards you for playing the game. It's amazing. Next up, a similar card. It's Ashaya, Soul of the Wild. This was, I think, going on $20, but now it's $4.50 from that Precon reprint. It's 3 green for a Star. Those stars are equal to the number of lands you control, so it's as big as the number of lands you have, and non-token creatures you control are forest lands in addition to their other types. That last ability can be as broken as you want, really, because there's combos with this card that lets you untap a land that's actually a creature to just sort of like keep going. But even just at face value, if I'm playing a deck that has a lot of landfall stuff, Tireless Tracker, Tireless Provisioner, Lotus Cobra, Scoot Swarm, if I'm playing all that nonsense, each creature I have being a land, how about AC, Tyrant of Dire Strait in my landfall deck? Why not? It just turns all of your creatures into extra triggers of this stuff, and it also lets them tap for mana. Don't forget that part too, because you could play a Shia, and now if you have 5 other creatures in play that are non-tokens, it's kind of like a Shia was free. So you can almost always start off a powerful turn with a Shia and have a bunch of follow-ups.
This is just such a nasty card. I'm running it in Sylvala and Galadriel for the combo potential. I think you have it in Belladros too, because that cares so much about lands and untapping things.
Yeah.
It's just such a good synergy piece. And to see it at $4.50 means I feel like a lot more decks that revolve around lands or who want to be putting in combos at a lower budget will be able to now. It's just, I think this just steps up landfall decks to just a scarier level than they already were, and they were pretty scary to begin with.
Yeah, seriously, don't sleep on this card because it does a lot. It's got some high power capabilities to it. It also is just a gigantic creature for 5 mana. So if you, like you said in Sylvala, even though that deck has combos with it, that's a totally different route you could go. But if you just play this on like turn 6 and you have 4 other non-token creatures in play and you have 6 lands, it's like an 11/11. It's just big. And then if you have something like Sylvala to care about the power or Rishkar's expertise, this thing can win you games in a lot of different ways, clearly.
It's so powerful. I mean, Big Green Stompy is so good at that, and then being able to turn your creatures into mana advantage as a creature on the field too, that is so good. I'm so happy to see it at $4.50.
Make sure you pick one up. You know, I'm going to regret not picking one up, so I'm going to go get one. I'm going to have it for when I build a green deck 2 months from now, and I'll be happy about it, because I'm sure it'll go back up to 10.
I mean, spoiler alert, this is not our spec, but maybe it should have been now that I'm speaking about it. But the next card we have is Cataract Parasite at $2.79. Black for a 1/1. Whenever an opponent draws a card, if you control a red permanent, you can have it deal 1 damage to that player. Wasn't this card like $20 a few months ago?
Yeah, because it was only ever printed in Conflux, I believe, and it's not the most busted card, and I can tell you that a lot of people are excited about this reprint because it's like, this card is so fine. I think it's a pretty reasonable rate for it, but in no universe would I ever have paid $21 for this card, so I'm happy to see it. Getting that reprint slash the price, you know, a tenth of the price, $2.79. Now I'm in for this card. I'm happy to buy this thing. This is going to be a great cost to value ratio.
I think that is correct, but I am actually going to be picking this one up for myself because I have a Nekuzar-esque deck, and I wasn't going to pay $20-something for a 1-drop that may or may not do anything depending on where I am in the game and what permanents I have. You know, being able to control a red permanent isn't always doable with 4 colors based on that deck, but now that it's $2.79, I am more likely to pick it up.
Yeah, this is good for like Group Slug, all of the like wheeling and dealing decks. Cataract Parasite, we're going to start seeing more too. Happy to see that one. Those are the Precon reprints. I think they were very good.
I think so too. I mean, Precons lately have been so spicy, not only in just how consistent the game plan has been, but just the reprints in general. I'm so happy because even the worst Precon, depending on where it is in our ranking, is still pretty good, whether you're going for a money standpoint or like just a play standpoint.
Yeah, and 2 of the Precons from Duskmourn had infinite loops in them. Like the enchantment one had something to do with like copying tokens that were enchantments that were copying themselves, and then like the blue-green one could loop Eudora and Sakura Tribuilder.
Yeah.
It's just like, wow.
I'm so surprised to see that. We have come a very far away from the 2011 like Kalia one where there were like 5 dragons total and everything. The average mana value was like 7.
Yeah, exactly. So next up from Duskmourn is Enduring Innocence, $4.50 for a 1/white 2/3 lifelink enchantment creature. I think it's a sheep. Whenever one or more creatures you control with power 2 or less enter, draw a card. But it only triggers once each turn, and when it dies, if it was a creature, it comes back as just an enchantment. So it still has that text on it. This is basically just another welcoming vampire, except it's possibly a little bit more useful since it is an enchantment and it does have lifelink. And when there's a board wipe, or you can sacrifice this, or it gets removed, you just get a second use. You get a whole other card
I mean, I think this is going to be slotting in your Enchantress decks because obviously it can come into the battlefield twice, which is amazing. This can slot into, instead of Mentor of the Meeks because you don't have to pay for this, even though it is only once per turn. I still think you'll be getting that value, and saving that mana is really important. And I do also agree, I think that being able to come back later will be an advantage, though it might not be obvious in the first few turns that you play it.
Do we like this better than Mentor of the Meek? I kind of get annoyed with Mentor because I don't want to pay that much.
I think that I have not been slotting in Mentor of the Meek lately because I want something immediate. I mean, maybe that's the Edgar player in me, but when I cast something, I want something immediate in return. And for 3 mana, I want at least 1 card out of it without paying. So yeah, I think this is better than Mentor of the Meek. At least in Enchantress decks, definitely.
What about just like little dudes?
I still think it's better.
I think the other thing you want to prioritize with Enduring Innocence, since it's once each turn, is throwing out tokens at instant speed. If I can play 1 token on each player's turn, I still get 4 cards in a turn cycle. So if you've got that kind of stuff, I definitely like this over Mentor of the Meek because you'll still be drawing cards. It's not like I'm never planning on drawing 4 cards in a turn cycle with Mentor of the Meek because that's like my whole turn. That's 3 for Mentor and 4 for all those activations. And one more thing to note, if we are talking about the spicier side of this card, if you pair it with Opalescence and a sack outlet, Opalescence makes your non-creature enchantments creatures, but this thing comes back as not a creature. So those 2 things with the sack outlet will loop infinitely. So it's just an extra little bonus for Enduring Vitality. Nice to have. I mean, if you're going to play all these cards anyway, now they're going to start going infinite with each other.
I mean, I am so thankful for that was my spec a few months ago. The next one we have on here is us eating our veggies. It's Verge lands, $5 to $8.50, with Gloomlake Verge being the most expensive. We're going to talk about Gloomlake Verge, but all of them have this similar type effect. You can tap it to add blue, or you can tap it to add black, but only if you control an island or a swamp. Note that doesn't say basic, so this opens up a lot of possibilities, and I have really been liking these. Not only do they come in gorgeous arts, but I hate the fact that there are a lot of lands that will come in and they can only tap for colorless unless you meet other criteria to tap for other colors. But this tapping for 1 color just blows all of those out of the water because of just its functionality immediately.
Yeah, like the filter lands or the signet lands where they need a little bit extra to get going. I love these. They're untapped duels, but they always make half of the colors. So like you're only ever unlocking swamp with this. You're always making blue, and you're only ever unlocking black. And it's like so trivially easy. You can have an island and a Gloomlake Verge, and now you can make black mana. It doesn't match a lot of the restrictions of the other lands. And I'm super happy to have these. These are good. These are like top tier. They're getting to be some of the top tier, I think, lands for Commander because they're always untapped. So make sure you pick some of these up because I don't want to be doing what we did with the Surveil lands where everybody fell fast asleep and now they're all like $20. Maybe the green-white one is like $9, but the rest of them are really expensive. I am not falling into this trap. We have been buying every copy that we see, like in person. We just go to scoop it up, and I'm happy to have these in my collection because I know I'm going to start needing a ton of them. I'm going to have to start putting these in all of my 2-color decks and pretty much all of my 3-color decks too.
BZ and I were talking about this when they first came out and they were first announced, and we were just figuring out, like, okay, where do we rank these lands? Because there's a lot of lands to choose from for Commander, and then it's like, okay, do we think these are better than, like, the fast lands? Yes, because they always come in untapped. Do we think these are better than the pathways? Because they'll always have both colors depending on what you have unlocked. Yes, because they will always bare minimum have one of the colors, which is just the baseline for the pathways. And I think that I think that these fall short behind, obviously, like actual duels and then shocks and then maybe the slower lands from like the Vow and, the Midnight Hunt cycles. But these are still like the 4th best lands, in our opinion, in the entire Commander format. And that's really amazing.
They might be better than the like Deserted Beach type lands. It's hard to say. They're probably worse than the Battle Bond lands that say like you need 2 opponents. But like they're 4th or 5th. So make sure you pick these up in the power rankings. They are very, very strong. Next up, Seasoned Pyromancer, a card we have not talked about that has just tanked in price lately. $4.50, 1 red for a 2/2. When he enters, you discard 2 cards, then draw 2 cards. Notably, if you have no cards in hand, you still draw the cards afterwards. For each non-land card discarded this way, you get a 1/1 red elemental creature token. Plus, this gravy that you will use 10% of the time, 3 red, exile it from your graveyard to create 2 1/1 red elemental creature tokens. That last part, I'm happy to have it. It's fine. In a pinch, you can maybe make some chump blockers or some sack fodder, but mostly we're getting 3 mana, double rummage, and we can choose what cards we pitch so that we get potentially extra bodies off of it. It's got an ETB trigger. It's a creature, so we can reanimate it or sacrifice it. It discards maybe for madness stuff. It draws cards for extra things that care about that. It just slices and dices, and it's probably one of the most efficient red creatures in the format.
I think this is such a good card. For red, at least, I always find my hand very empty because it's always exiling the top of my library. It's never drawing cards. I mean, that's red's weak point. That everyone knows that. But unfortunately, it's very hard to find real card draw. But as VZ said, yeah, the madness is super nice. Or if you just have 0 cards in hand, being able to just say, okay, I'll draw 2 when this enters for 3 mana is so nice. Plus, I actually have used the exile from the graveyard type deal because,
it's not nothing.
You know, you get board wiped and then you just need a couple chump blockers or something. People forget about that. It's not only at sorcery speed. So if you just have the mana, you can hold it up and go, surprise, like your lethal attack won't really work.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot that this card does. And I always, always, always turn to this card over Tormenting Voice, for example. I'm happy to pay 1 extra mana for like 2 or 3 extra bodies and a very similar initial effect. I really don't like the one useness of Tormenting Voice where you're just like, here I go, or Thrill Possibility, like, okay, thing's done now. This just offers a lot more stuff. It can put more cards in the graveyard. Whether or not you're like some kind of artifact reanimator deck or some rummaging madness deck, I'm always turning to Pyromancer. I think it's one of the best effects like that. It just really does a lot. I'm very happy. And we were talking about this card maybe 2 years ago on the channel for like $10. It's $4.50. It's like you're trying to find one on the street when you walk outside.
I've slotted this into decks just casually because it's like, oh, I have one in my binder. Maybe it'll be okay somewhere. And I've been very pleasantly surprised with it. I think it's a very good card.
Definitely for those Boros type decks that are struggling with card advantage or card filtering, because it's not card advantage, but it is card filtering and potentially could be card advantage in a desperate situation. But for those types of Boros decks that don't have access to blue or green or black, I definitely like Seasoned Pyro. I wouldn't really play it outside of like Madness decks. Like if you're Jund Madness, you could probably play it, but you don't really need that when you're going to be like in black and green.
But if you do have any other types of synergies, maybe it'll work. I mean, try it, right? It's $4.50 at this point.
Right, and 3 bodies for 3 mana.
The next one we have is an enchantment. It's Training Grounds at $5. Blue for enchantment. Activated abilities of creatures you control cost 2 less to activate, but this can't reduce the mana to less than 1. This is so good because I feel like activated abilities are stapled onto so many creatures nowadays, and if your deck just has a lot of them to turn through, this can be a great turn 1 play to get your deck going faster than the rest of the table.
I love this card because this is the glue that holds your hot garbage pile together, where you're just like trying to activate some 6 mana ability on a 9 mana creature over and over. Training Grounds and some of the cards like it are like, dude, I got you. And they can turn it from a dream into reality with, hey, I was going to activate Kenrith's last ability once, but instead I'll activate it like 3 times. It's a pretty huge reduction. If you're doing like quote-unquote jank with Thrasios, I was tempted to do this. Turns out Thrasios plus Training Grounds, not actually jank, just really annoying. But that sort of thing, this really powers up those decks.
I know BZ has a running streak of feeling, ooh, this will be fun, this will be janky, and then it is not fun or janky for anybody.
I try. I really try. I can't build a mono blue deck to save my life, but I did have a mono blue deck with Training Grounds in it. It just didn't make it through the peer review section.
It was just too good. Training Grounds, like making all of your activated abilities that much cheaper and being able to store whatever activated ability you want in the command zone for the most part is a very dangerous combo.
I just love this card. It's so goofy. It's so janky. And when I see it, it makes me happy. It's definitely a fun card. And it was a card that was difficult to stomach for like $30. But now that it's $5, get in there. Build that crappy activation deck that costs 4 mana, but really costs 2 mana with Training Grounds.
It's going to be so much more doable now, and we all love jank, so why not try it out?
Next up is an absolute staple that I'm going to remind you to buy because it is down in price. Mia?
Lorn of the Third Path at $4. 2 and a white for a 2/1 with Vigilance. When she enters, you destroy a target artifact or enchantment. Sorry, I stumbled over that. If you tap her, you and target opponent each draw a card. This is so good. I just put it in CEDH. It's that good, but we also put it in a lot of casual decks too because it is white Rexage, but you can also draw a card off of it. Granted, you have to give a card to your opponent, but if you're in a pinch, that doesn't matter, and you can make some sort of political deals at times too.
It's not controversial. This card is strictly better than Reclamation Sage. It is exactly Reclamation Sage with a bunch of other text on it. Now, notably, me and Mia don't love group hug effects that much. We don't love giving everybody something. However, this is only giving you and one opponent something, and it's not mandatory, thank God. Because if it was, if this said you and somebody draw a card every one of your upkeeps, I'd be a little less psyched about it, and I would hopefully tell you to sacrifice it or something. But when you are in a pinch, when you need something, when you are working together to take out an arch enemy, this is like serious value. It's better than drawing a card in, let's say, 10% of the situations or 10% of the scenarios that you might come in. So when you're in those scenarios, it's fantastic. And, in the spikier end, if somebody tries to Thassel's Oracle, you can make them draw in response and they lose.
I think that it didn't need vigilance too, but you can still punch in and also draw and have someone else draw if you need to. I think that's just a little bit funny because it's like, I would play this even if it didn't have vigilance.
I don't think this card has ever attacked in the history of Magic.
I've attacked once or twice with it.
It never gets through because it'll just die. At least I've always had board states where it will never attack.
Yeah, you just punch in. It's like, I don't know. I've been able to punch in at least once or twice with this, but it is a good card.
You say like, let me hit you in the face for 2 and I'll let you draw a card. Because I would say yes to that.
It's like the gun to the
I'm
head.
a
Like,
sucker.
let me hit you for 2.
Why?
Because I said so.
Okay.
But this is a great card. And yeah, whether you're playing it on the very spiky ends to help against Thassa's Oracles or turn on your Mox Ambers, or at the lower end just because you need a pinch of removal and card draw, this is a very good card, especially if you can blink it or something. You can get those triggers over and over.
Sacrifice, reanimate, blink it, toolbox, tutor for it. It's great. Next up, Bitterthorn. This is Animus at $12. If you are a big Sword of the Animus fan, I think you definitely want to give this one a try. It's a 3-mana artifact with Living Weapon. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, and it automatically attaches to the germ. So whenever this thing attacks, whatever's attached to it, you may search your library for a basic land and put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So this has some positives over Nissa's Sword of Animus, and it has some negatives. The positives are you could play this on turn 3 and then attack on turn 4 with it. It's a little bit iffy if that's possible with Sword of the Animus because it is 2 mana to play, and you'll have to have another creature and 2 mana to equip. So how are you doing all that before turn 4? So that's I would say on average it attacks sooner. But if the germ dies somehow, it is more annoying to equip because it costs 3 to equip. So there's some give and takes to it for sure. But I do like Bitterthorn. I've had a lot of success with it.
I haven't been able to play it yet, but I think when I've seen it with you, it's been very good. And just overall being able to ramp when you attack, especially if that's what, your deck is trying to do, or if you have like the pure steel paladin effects where you can equip for free, this can be a very good like little toolbox part to your deck.
I think it's good for equipment decks, and I think a lot of decks, if you're playing one of them, you probably just want the other one also. They are very similar. I don't even know if I had to guess which one was better. That's why I want to tell you about this card, because it's $12, and I think Sword of the Animus is like 8 or 9 or something, so they're very comparable. I'm really not sure which one's better. I think it all depends on if you have haste enablers or equipment cheaters, because I think if you start to have those things, Bitterthorn's definitely better.
I didn't want to pay $22 for this. It was way too expensive when it was at that price point when it first came out. It was good, but it wasn't 20 plus good, at least in my opinion. But seeing it at $12, I actually might try and slot it into something a little bit lower. The budget decks will be able to handle it if you're rocking around like a 150 and you want to do like a Boros equipment deck. I think you can really handle it with a lot of the reprints that have come out lately.
Yeah, it's much more palatable to actually pick one up and try it without feeling like you wasted $20. Next up is a reprint from Mystery Booster 2. Now, Mystery Booster 2, it has come and gone in the sense that all the copies of it are sold, but it did a lot for reprints. Even though some of the apps are not really catching up to them yet, it is definitely a real effect. Snuff Out, for example, is our first one. It's $8 with that Future Sight reprint. It looks awesome. It's 3 and a black for an instant. If you control a swap, you can just forget what I said about that 3 and a black, because you can pay 4 life instead and destroy target non-black creature. It can't be regenerated. Now, who cares about regeneration? It's not real anymore. But 0 mana to destroy a creature. It is slightly selective in that you can only hit, let's say, 75 to 85% of creatures that exist, but you're paying nothing. I think this card is fantastic. It is seeing a lot of play, but I think it's eternally slept on because some people look at non-black and they go, ew, and I look at 0 mana and I go, ooh.
I mean, this card is so good. We told you to buy it when Doctor Who reprint came out. We're going to tell you again to buy it now because the Mystery Booster reprint came out. And it was also reprinted at Common in the Future Sight Point, which is probably why it's gone down in price. But I paid $20 for a crusty Mercadian Masks version of this back when it was either this or the dual deck with the Garrick and Liliana one. And I am happy to pick up it for $8 because I also need another one. I really like that new border for it.
Yeah, so we don't usually talk about art factoring into whether a card is worth picking up, but I hate like every other art for Snuff Out. I really don't I watch Doctor Who. I don't understand the Snuff Out for Doctor Who. I don't think it looks cool or like it doesn't do anything for me. The Mercadian Mask one, like you said, very crusty. And so I love the Liliana art one, and I'm happy they gave it this super cool frame with Future Sight. I guess apparently this is the motion that I've been doing every time for Future Sight. You know, guys, the Future Sight frame. So I highly recommend picking up this copy specifically out of all of the Snuff Outs you could buy.
I think that just looks gorgeous, and I kind of want to see where the foil falls to or rises to. I don't know, wherever it settles. I want to get that one because the foils, we've pulled a couple, look really nice in person. I'm pretty surprised. I usually don't like newer treatments and stuff, but I'm coming around to this Future Sight one.
Is that maybe because it's older? It's not a new treatment.
Yeah, I know. Maybe it is because it's older, but I'm really coming around to this. I think they look amazing.
Okay, next up, zombie players rejoice because you basically just unlocked a brand new card that nobody was going to bother buying for $45. It's Rot Hulk, which is only $8, and this card is obscene. It is 5 black for a 5/5 menace. When Rot Hulk enters, return up to X target zombie cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the number of opponents you have. So this thing is 7 mana, but you can also cheat it into play or do whatever zombies like doing, or maybe throw down like a Mikaeus to give it Undying to trigger it again, and you just get 3 zombies back every time. This guy I've had in Commander Cube for a while. It's like one of the best cards in the cube. I just love it. It's so bonkers. It gets so much value.
I mean, this is the reason why people were rushing to get that Game Nights type box at one point, because this was the big card in it because it was worth $45, as BZ said. But seeing it at $8 is so much better because I feel like for every creature type, there's always that one chase creature that's way too much money because it was only printed once or twice or only as like this treatment or that treatment. And Rot Hulk was that. And now I'm so happy that zombie players get to have that. Now their chase card is what, like Necro Duality or something?
Yeah, I was going to actually mention Necro Duality because Rot Hulk, even though it's a really strong card just on rate, I can reanimate pretty easily like 10 mana worth of zombies with this, trigger my ETBs, sacrifice them for value, etc. But it goes infinite with Necro Duality and a sack outlet. If you have, you trigger the Necro Duality, cool, I'm about to get a second copy. Before that, I'll sack the original. Now the second one comes back, gets back the original, and we just rinse and repeat for infinite everything. So I think zombies also is one of those archetypes that has a lot of combos in it, even if you're playing a more casual version. Because I guarantee you probably have Gravecrawler and a death payoff like a Diregraph Captain and like a sack outlet or a Pitiless Plunder. Like those types of things just go infinite all the time. So Rot Hulk's another way to stack it on top and make sure that just like zombies do kind of flavorfully, if there's enough of them, the game is just over.
Zombies are spicy, and I'm happy that they have one more card in their arsenal because this seemed out of reach for so long.
Moxfield.com, truly the best way to build a commander deck on the internet. It lets you sort cards, tag cards, comment on other people's decks. You can go follow us. We have a profile because we love Moxfield that much. Moxfield's going to change the way you build commander decks, people. Get on it.
The next card is a spicy one because it's actually a tutor. It's natural order at $6. Additional cost to cast this spell, you sacrifice a green creature. Search your library for a green creature card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. This is easy, and I love the fact that it doesn't say non-token green creature. So if you have a sapperling just hanging around or something, you can sack that and then just get your best creature onto the battlefield immediately.
Notably, mana dorks are going to be plentiful in green. They're all over the place. Tokens, whatever crap you have, wood elves lying around. Turn it into the best creature in your deck. Turn it into a Worldspine Worm, a Protean Hulk, a Nyx Bloom Ancient, a name a green creature.
I was going to name a mana dork. I was going to be like, Wood Elves.
Turn it into a Wood Elves.
Turn it into a Crater Hoof. Turn it into whatever. But it's really awesome, too, because the sacking is a part of the cost. As we mentioned, I think last month or somewhere else with Diabolic Intent. So if you have a Protean Hulk on the field, for instance, you could sack it and then get 10 billion mana worth of creatures, too.
Yeah, if you're going for combos or whatever, it does trigger death effects in like an uncounterable way because the cost of the spell is to sacrifice a creature. This card was very expensive. It sort of creeps back up every time it's reprinted. So I'm urging you, even though the art is a little stinky, just pick it up for $6. This is like an absolute steal for how busted this card is. This card is obscene. It is like probably in the top 1% of the cards in terms of like raw power in the format. It's kind of one of those cards like Tooth and Nail where you have to try not to win when you play it if you're going for a more casual vibe. And if you're not, get this card in your green decks, people.
Speaking of Tooth and Nail, that's also a lot cheaper than I thought it would be. It was printed into Commander Masters, and that killed the price a while ago. This isn't an advocation for that. This isn't on this episode. I just wanted to tell you that if you're looking for green tutors, also a good one.
Honestly, we'll see you next month for that Tooth and Nail. I forgot about that. That's a really good one. Don't steal that idea. If somebody steals that idea about Tooth and Nail, I'm coming for you. Next up, a busted Magic card, Underworld Breach, $12 instead of the 20-something it has been. 1 in a red for a Future Sight enchantment. Each non-land card in your graveyard has Escape. The Escape cost is equal to that card's mana cost plus exile 3 cards from your graveyard. At the beginning of the end step, sacrifice Underworld Breach. It's like a one-time use. You get it for 1 turn, but oh boy, what a turn it will be. Now, the first thing everyone thinks about with this card is just like, grinding station, combo, Wheel of Fortune, mana geyser, go infinite, blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of mostly known for that. But I've seen value breaches or just kind of like mid-rangey go breach, removal spell, board wipe, card draw, and it still doesn't even feel that bad. It looks pretty good from the opposite side.
Where are you seeing that? I have never seen that. I always see Breach hits the field and you go, okay, I'll scoop. Because Breach is just so powerful. You're either countering the thing that they're looping their Lotus Petal to get a bunch of mana, and you pour it into a gigantic like Torment of Hailfire. You pour it into some big combo. Value. If someone says value breach, I laugh because that's like, guys, don't worry, this is a value breach. Okay.
It's not that kind of deck, guys.
I win.
Oh, wait. Turns out it was. Usually you can go infinite, but I'm saying even in the worst case scenario, this can still be cashed in to get some value. Basically, like, treat it like a weird Eternal Witness in red, which is honestly kind of a color pie break. And I think this card feels pretty color pie break. I think that's kind of the consensus. I haven't asked anybody, but this doesn't feel like a red card. But yeah, it's a very, very strong Magic card.
We'll put a poll in it later, but this is such a good card. And if you can recur it from the graveyard for any reason, maybe you do have an Ewit or something like that, you can just do value versions and then just keep putting it out. That could be really interesting.
Hey, triggers Constellation. That's all I'm saying. Next up is a card I don't know if this channel has ever talked about, because in my mind, it has pretty much never been worth buying, but it's Scale Lord Reckoner, straight out of the Halo Secret Lair. It's $4. 3 white for a 4/4 flyer. Whenever a dragon you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, destroy target non-land permanent that player controls. This is a serious deterrent. Obviously, we're talking only Dragons decks. But previously, this card was like $20, and it's like a 5 mana investment, and so I never really got to playtest it or really care to buy it, because it feels a little bit on that, oh, it's kind of expensive. But now that it's $4, pick it up, test it out, play it without any worries. You can take it out of your deck and I wouldn't even feel bad because it's only $4. It's just, it is a really solid deterrent in a Dragons deck. Like, I'm not going to target your stuff. I don't want to get my stuff blown up.
I mean, it's really nasty, and I feel like in things like Ur-Dragon, which has become more popular because of the reprints, like I feel like everywhere Ur-Dragon's reprinted now, that it's easier to get those out. There are cost reduction things, whether you have like Dragon, like the little guy, the
Ur-Dragon.
Yeah, it's like Ur-Dragon, the Servant, etc. This can go down to 2 mana depending on where, you are in the game, and I think that is an incredibly powerful effect. Or if you can cheat it out for any reason, that's just
like in the Ur-Dragon decks, when this is 4 mana, now we're cooking. This thing is really scary when it's not that expensive 5 mana. When you can get to 4 or 3 or something, it's like, this is annoying, because not only is it that really strong deterrent from people killing your stuff, whatever else you have in play is no longer on the menu to be destroyed. You have to kill the Scale Lord Reckoner first. Because what am I going to do? Like, oh, they have an Atarka. It's really big. I'll kill the Atarka, get my best thing blown up, and now the Scale Lord Reckoner is still there, and I still have to kill it.
Dragons are known for reducing their cost, because you can't just be like, okay, I'll do nothing for the first 6 turns, and then on turn 7, I guess I'll do, the Urza's Incubator combos with like the Ur-Dragon and then a bunch of other little dorks. This can come out very, very fast. I am super scared of this, and I think the only reason that I haven't been seeing it in all of the Ur-Dragon decks and Dragon decks that we play against is because of its high price tag. Where was it even printed first?
It was in the Ur-Dragon precon.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
A very expensive pre-con.
Yes.
Very hard to reprint, but they got it at the future site, so there's a cool little new version for everybody. Next up is Displacer Kitten. It's $8, 3 and a blue for a 2/2. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, exile up to one target non-land permanent you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. Can I complain for a second?
Sure. Why wouldn't I like
There's
it?
something that really annoys me, and this has nothing to do with gameplay. When they print cards, I'll use the example. Displacer Beast is a card from AFR, and it's like a fully grown version of Displacer Kitten, and it's like 100 times worse than this card. Displacer Beast is some kind of garbage throwaway. And I would assume a Displacer Kitten is like less powerful. No, it's way better.
No, I completely agree, because when you're in Lord of the Rings, for instance, the Orcish Bowmasters are like these guys. You're like, okay, maybe they're just like little foot soldiers with a bow and arrow. That's fine. It's just like maybe there's two of them. No, these things are one of the best cards in Commander, and then you have like one of the commanders, like Gimli or something. They're like counter of kills, and it's like, I don't know. I don't really know where to slot this, but those two Orcish Bowmasters, those are going in every deck that can run them.
Right, it's like Jace Beleren at the height of his power, but he's actually worse than Jace as a 5-year-old. This doesn't make any sense, but totally unrelated to how amazing this card is, because Displacer Kitten enables so many different types of shenanigans. It goes infinite with stuff. Apparently this is the episode where, if you really want to, every card on this list goes infinite with something, but like, the thing I think about with Displacer Kitten is like Teferi, Time Raveler, and any 0-drop that can definitely go off. Displacer Kitten just triggers many, many times. It's not once per turn, and it doesn't have to flicker creatures. It can flicker anything. Flicker your Portal to Phyrexia. Go off.
I have this in Galadriel, and it is so spicy in there, because that is just when the creature's ETB. You're going to be getting a ton of effects, and then with this in there, being able to flicker creatures that like put counters on stuff lets me draw cards, and then once I draw cards, it lets me do this, and it's going to just keep going. And this card is so good. Plus, the art is super cute. I mean, little cat on it.
This one, not that cute to me.
Really?
It's a little creepy.
It's
got some like tentacles going on.
Do you like the miso one at least a little better?
Oh yeah, our version of it. I definitely like our version.
Check us out on Whatnot.
With our son on it. Yeah, I love that one. Displacer Kitten, it's a messed up card. It's one of those cards that scales no matter what type of deck you're playing. It can be the best card in your casual deck, and it can be the best card in your super high power Brago Blink deck. It does it all. But time for our little game where we speculate on cards. Now, to clarify, for people who may not know what this game is, we buy 5 copies of a card. So we're not trying to cheat the market or anything. We just want to have a little stakes when we make personal bets, because we love to BM each other. We're giving an excuse for that.
We are very competitive people, and also we have an end of the year wrap up coming in 2 months, because we've been doing this for almost a year at this point, where we're going to total everything up, see who has lost or gained the most money, and then crown them the winner of the year, and then do it again next year.
Yeah, we're very happy to compete for any reason. So last month, Mia speculated on a card. It has gone up $3.20 since then, so you're sitting pretty with that one.
Yeah, it is Plague Bearer of Nurgle. It is a Warhammer card, and it went very well with the Rakdos group slug precon. Everyone was very hyped about that, so I wanted to cash in on that, and hopefully that keeps up a little bit so it can carry me to the end of the year.
What's your spec for this month?
My spec this month is Tendershoot Dryad at $5. This is such a good card. It is in Galadriel too, because it is so much value. It is army in a can. It comes down for 5 mana. It just makes so many bodies, whether you need to sack those, swing in with those, whatever, and it's just a very good card. See, I bought it at $20, and seeing it reprinted in the precon makes me think that it's just going to go up even more.
Yeah, precon reprints, they usually take a hit to the card, but I feel like a lot of times if it's a highly sought-after card, it'll creep up. So I think this is a pretty good spec. My previous spec was Swarmyard Massacre. Hasn't gone up a ton. It's up 50 cents, so it's positive. We take those. My current spec is Archdruid's Charm, which I got at $6. This card is ridiculous. I think I pretty much said I would speculate and buy a couple copies of this. Most of the copies that I'm speculating are just going to go in my decks, and I'm happy that this is like below the $10 or $8 that it was, and I really just see it going up. I don't know if I'm going to, and maybe this is a fault of my own for playing this game, but I don't know if this card's going to go up in a small enough window to get me bonus points in the game that we're playing, but I know it's a good long-term investment in general.
I'm playing to win. BZ's just playing to add to our collection at this point.
I don't know, man. I got real good with that Nesting Dovehawk spike.
Anything else?
There's a couple probably. We'll have to check at the end of year wrap up. But
We'll total that up.
If you want to see us compete for no reason in future or previous Most Worth Buying episodes, you can watch one right here.